skeptic who's also a theist, and he basically said that he doesn't apply didn't apply skepticism to his theistic beliefs. They were simply a way of eliminating despair, and that they, were not rationally supported. Well, okay, I can't say anything to that other than that's not what I do, and I don't recommend it. I care more about what's true than whether or not it's, makes you feel funny.
Well, what's interesting is that I just read a research paper that talked about children, very young children, and the difference in their beliefs about what happens after you die. And it turns out that extremely young children are much less likely to believe that some part of their consciousness survives death than older children. So what this says is that we're actually teaching children to believe in an afterlife. They don't come into the world believing that there's an afterlife or that their consciousness in some way survives their physical death. And so I think that in some ways we are actually infecting them with this fear.
Yeah.
And causing them to cling to this.
Which might be a good time to go back to Marius, who called in before the show real quick. You
there,
Marius?
I'm here, y'all.
Yeah, can we turn that up again for him, and then we'll turn it back down afterwards?
Sorry, again?
Yeah, we can barely hear you.
Okay, there's nothing much I can do. Can you hear me now?
Well, if it's not going to be going out over the stream where they can hear him, then Marius, I apologize. We're just going to have to go ahead and drop this, and we'll talk about the subject off the air because the volume on your phone's not even enough to get out to the stream. So I apologize for that. He had called in before the show, and we cranked up the volume in the studio, which won't affect what's going to the feed, to talk about kids and atheism and how you deal with raising kids and broaching the subject. I don't know. You didn't get to chime in much before the show, so.
Yeah, and I guess Marius has a 7-year-old daughter. He's a closet atheist, and he's wondering how he can, I guess, let her know in some way she doesn't have to believe in a God. And so I think that one of the things that I've done with my son, who's almost 5, is I've started introducing him to the concept of like the Greek and Roman myths, because I think the more he learns about other people's views on gods and religion, the less likely he is to accept blindly anyone else's views on this. So I think that that's a good way of inoculating him against just blindly following a religious belief. And then, of course, as Matt mentioned, Russell has this game that he plays with his son that he introduced to him very young, and it's real or pretend. And you pick something and you ask him if it's real or pretend, and he gets to decide on his own and provide his own justification for his answer. And I think things like that are really good ways of getting kids to think about what they believe and why they believe them, and that's ultimately what we want them to do. So
the big thing is that while we are actively in opposition to religion on the whole, it's hey, there was a weird camera shot. We don't believe it. We see no reason why anybody else should believe it, and in many cases, if not most or nearly all cases, we see a great deal of harm, and our concern is with whether or not things are true. So the suggestion that I made was the one I always make, which is to teach your kids how to think instead of what to think or what you think they should think. And that's good and it's pithy and everything else, but more importantly, I wasn't an atheist until I was well over 30. I was a skeptic long before then. I just didn't apply skepticism to my religious beliefs. There are plenty of people who are skeptics and theistic. I just don't happen to think that they're applying skepticism to their theism, and in some cases they're denying that it should, but that's a subject for another day. I tend to think that if you can foster a sense of curiosity and kind of go for the awe of discovery and exploration, of getting them to question everything and explore for the answers to those questions, and to be willing to say, I don't know, and none of us know, when we have no good answer, I think they'll end up fine, even if they're religious for many, many years, or if they happen to be raised in a, unless they're being raised in some particularly damaging, cult that doesn't allow this sort of education to go on. I would hope that most of them are going to, find their way through to seeing reason and seeing the benefits of a rational worldview where we rely on the scientific method and evidence. But.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, like you said, even if they end up being theists themselves, what they will have is the ability to, at the very least, minimize the harm that those beliefs are likely to do. So they're unlikely to accept the claims of some religions that you can't take blood transfusions, or that you can't have vaccinations, or
you should pray instead of going to the hospital.
Right, that you shouldn't use birth control, that you should let God control your fertility.
And maybe you'll be able to, maybe they'll be convinced that they shouldn't be imposing their personal views on everybody else through legislation.
Yes.
We can only hope. Because those are my favorite theists.
Oh,
People
yeah.
like the Reverend Barry Lynn, who runs Americans United that we talked about earlier. He and I will disagree all day long on the whole God subject, all day. And we could have, great rows over it. But we're in agreement on having a secular nation and enforcing and encouraging church-state separation. And those types of ideas you can foster relatively easily by exposing your kid to everything in the world. Mm-hmm. Don't keep them locked up in a little private school with a couple of friends, and they're in church all the time and they never see anything outside. I'm convinced, the 8 years that I spent in the Navy that helped me understand that my view on the world at the time was incredibly myopic, and while it's been broadened, there's still a lot more to go. So.
Oh, did I tell you my recent discussion with my son regarding the Pledge of Allegiance?
No.
Yeah, because he was taught in school to say the Pledge of Allegiance with the under God part in it, and which he pronounces unaga, because he doesn't get the whole God concept. But whenever I say it, I omit that, and he, for the longest time, was really adamant that you must say it this way, because he's very literal at this age. Well, I finally convinced him the other day that it's not necessary, and that not everybody puts that in there. It wasn't in the original, and I don't say it that way. So he accepts that I say it different from what he's heard everyone else say it. And so it was really funny listening to him say the pledge the other day, because the last part of it, we've got the under God part settled, but now we're into the last part, which is with liberty and juices for all.
Cool.
Yeah, so.
I'm a fan. Juices for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm on board. We've got Barry in Chattanooga. How are you?
I am fine, and congratulations on your award.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thanks to all the people who voted.
Yes, I watch you guys every Sunday. I'm probably off topic here, but have you had a chance to look at Stephen Hawking's new book, The Grand Design?
I haven't read it yet. So basically we're talking about press releases and reading what other people have to think. Right.
Well, I have ordered it on Amazon.com. I'm excited about getting it this week. But I did read not just a review, but they interviewed him, and he is saying, and I really liked it. He is saying that the universe had no need of a God to bring itself into existence.
Yeah. And he's not the first. It's just that he may be the one who actually publicizes this idea in a way that it has a much broader reach. We've talked about it before. Lawrence Krauss's lecture that you can watch online, A Universe from Nothing, talks about this. And I talked to Vic Stenger when he was down here in Austin both times. And the first time he was here, he tried to explain this idea. And I didn't remotely grasp it. I simply don't have the requisite understanding of physics and everything to get it. And so the first time I was just like, I like that Vic Stenger guy, but on that one issue, my brain can't quite wrap around it. And the second time we were down, I'd already seen Lawrence Krauss's lecture, and he and I were talking. We were talking about a number of things, including the Large Hadron Collider. But we went off on this idea of a universe from nothing, and I understood it about like that much better.
Right.
So yeah, I'm not remotely in any kind of position to comment on it. it's one of those areas where, as a matter of practical necessity, I have no problem at all accepting that this is the best current scientific explanation that are coming. It's not an appeal. It's not a fallacious appeal to authorities, because these are in fact the authorities in the field. They may be wrong, and if they are, demonstrably wrong, then it'll be through evidence and through the scientific method. I don't have faith that the universe was created from nothing. I just happen to agree with Hawking, and who's basically echoing Laplace, that there's no need for that particular hypothesis. One of the things that I found insanely funny, and I giggled quite a bit, Ray Comfort called Stephen Hawking unscientific.
Yes,
That's
this
unbelievable.
is.
To me, that's like somebody who's sitting there eating a TV dinner telling Gordon Ramsay or Graham Elliott that they just don't know food.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. The reviews I have read on this book, and I am not a physicist or a math whiz by any means, but the reviews I have read are all very positive, in the sense that the book is written for the layman. It leaves out all the highfalutin math, and it's very understandable. So I'm excited about getting it and reading it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Well, again, congratulations again, and thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, Barry. Appreciate
Thank you.
it.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, I hope it's one of those things that really pushes the conversation in a certain direction.
Oh, yeah.
You can watch the trends of discussion over the past 10 years or so. I've been involved in the ACA doing this show for 5 or so. And where the topics are does this. And part of it is driven, most of it, I would say, is driven by particular apologists. You'll see an apologist put out a video or have a debate where a certain point's raised, and it becomes like the argument of the day, whether it's the transcendental argument or the cosmological argument or something else. And so we're constantly in this reactionary mode of responding to whatever the current theistic meme is. And on occasion, there'll be something that comes out, and I love it, because when it happens, it's something that's, science, and here's the evidence, and it comes out, and it pushes the conversation in another direction. It's not simply a response to theistic propositions. It puts theists on the defensive, which, by the way, is where they should be, because they're the ones that are positing something that is contrary to everything we know and understand about the universe. So.
Well, what I love is that no matter what theists are arguing against, they're still on about evolution, which is, that's a done deal, guys.
That whole gravity thing.
Yeah.
It's just angels pulling you down.
And while they're gnashing their teeth and wailing over whether evolution is true or not, science just continues marching on. We just keep